When I grow up, I will make sure this village suffers for treating us as if we are dogs, and I will make sure I repay you handsomely for going through pains because of me, Elle bravely said while directly a gaze at my helpless mother. You will do not such thing, my son, my mother politely replied. She was sitting opposite to me as she held my right hand with her two hands. When you grow up, you will not help to destroy your village, rather you will help to build your village. Is that right? I nodded twice without a word. She continued, when you pray to maltreat people when you grow up, God will not answer your prayers, let alone giving you money to carry out such evil intentions. But when pray to help the needy ones, should you become rich, God will make sure you become rich because He knows your intentions are pure and humanity. Also learn how to pay evil for good. Please note of this, my son. Anyone who wishes to be useful to his country does not pay evil for evil. And God will continually increase the person's blessings. Did you hear me? Yes, ma'am, I replied. Now go and dress up. Let's leave for the farm. Okay, mama. I stood immediately and changed into my farming clothes. My mother and I seemed to be poorest family in aka village. We were treated as rags and commoners in the village. My name is Okchukwu. I am 11 years old. I was single-handed trained by my mother since I was told my father died when my mother was 4 months pregnant. We lived inside an old hut that seemed ready to fall either today or tomorrow. It was too difficult for my mother to raise me since my father had left with nothing. Not even a farmland. I was very humble and energetic boy who could never let my mother suffer alone. My mother purchased a farmland on a yearly basis from Onyeka, who had many farmlands. My mother had been working so hard to make sure she met up with the price demand from Onyeka. If unfortunately she failed to meet up, the farmland would immediately be taken away from her. One thing my mother had never thought of doing was to allow me hawk despite our awful situation. I had been very helpful to her. I almost followed her to everywhere she would go. I was very close to her as a newborn baby as to her mother. It was a huge fan farming alongside my mother. We were very busy getting rid of weeds around crops. We worked, rested, and when it was around 6 p.m. we returned back home. The next morning, as early as 6:30 a.m. my mother had already awoken to prepare breakfast. She had already made fire with a pot of yam boiling on top. She wasn't expecting me to wake up yet because I slept late last night. The weather was very cold, which made me wear long sleeve. I dizzily made me to the backyard and found her cooking. Good morning, mama, greeted and yawned. Good morning, my son, she politely replied. I wasn't expecting you to wake up by this time. Did you sleep well? Yes, I did, mama, I replied. Why did have to wake up by this early to cook, mama? Because I know you must be hungry when you wake up. What are you cooking? Porridge yam. Do you like it? Of course, you know it's one of my favorite foods. She was sitting close to the pot of yam boiling on top of fire. She adjusted some firewood and turned back to me. My son, please do not be offended. I am sending you out this early morning. Would you go inside and collect 100 naira from my purse so you can rush down to Mama Ada's shop and buy me Maggi? I forgot there is no Maggi in the house. Okay, mama. I quickly went inside, collected the money and made for Mama Ada's shop to get the Maggi. While on the way, I met an elder who just passed me from behind. I greeted him, but he focused his gaze towards his direction and didn't look back to know who greeted him, let alone responding to my greeting. Maybe I was not audible enough so he could hear me. Or maybe his whole attention was focused on where he was going. I concluded. It started me the way another elder who was coming in front of me. Within that range of time I greeted him. He warned me seriously not to greet him again so I don't afflict him with my evil existence. As if that was not enough, El met 2 children I consider my age mates. They began to stone me and called me all sorts of names. I become maladjusted when I got to Mama Ada's shop and she chased me sway like a mad person. I shed tears and went back home with frustrated. I never wanted my mother to notice I was crying, therefore I dried away my tears from my eye. My mother sariried to me when she saw me coming. She comforted me, dried away my tears and took me inside. It was 3 p.m. the following afternoon. The sun had positioned itself well on the sky and was very harsh on people. I was hurrying to the house as regards to a cutlass we forget at home when we got to the farm. On my way I met the same 2 boys who bullied me yesterday as they came towards me. They had started picking up stones from ground and preparing for the same similar action they exhibited yesterday. We were still separated by distance. I was preparing for my own unique action as I bravely marched forward towards them to reduce the distance. I dodged about 4 or 5 stones they throw at me, but only 2 were able to land on my head until I faced off work them. I first gave the first boy a very deserving blow on the nose, and so was the second boy. I jammed their heads together and pushed them inside a nearby bush. I took a handful of sand from the ground and fed them with it one after another. When they staggered up, I posted properly for a fight as I waited patiently for their own retaliation. It surprised me the way they took to their heels without looking back. I dusted myself and continued my journey to the house. At about 6 p.m. same day, it was never long we came back from the farm trying to shower. Eat and rest for tomorrow's market. We quaked as a particular voice from outside continued in a grumpy manner. We emerged outside to see who the person was. Behold, it was Mazi Uche and his son, father to one of the boys I beat up this afternoon. Look at what your child has done to my son, Mazi Uche grumpily said as he exposed his son's body to my mother. On the areas he sustained bruises, including his nose. Oh my God! My mother shouted in depression. Okachukwu, did you do something like this? She tried to touch the boy to show some concern, but Mazi Uche shouted at her immediately. He quickly drew his son back. Don't touch my son. Like mother, like son. Evil woman. You are asking this taboo son of yours if he did beat up my son. I am now a liar. A complete title man of aka land. We must hear this. Mazi Uche, please calm down, it hasn't gotten. My mother politely. Speech was interrupted by the gruffness of Mazi Obi from a very close distance. Where are that evil woman and her evil son Okachukwu? Maxi Obi grumpily said as he approached with his own son. Okay, you already outside. Look at what your evil son did to my humble son. Showing the area his own son sustained bruises to my mother. I was standing while gazing at them like moron. Wasn't even showing concern to their complaints. I was only touched when I noticed my mother had started shedding tears. Why did you to beat them up, Okachukwu? What happened? My mother asked with tears on her cheeks. I am sorry, Mama. But they keep looking for my trouble. Tears slowly rolled down my cheeks. I met these boys on my way going to buy pepper you sent me the other day. They bullied me, and as if that was not enough, they stoned me. I didn't retaliate because I want in a good mood. Today as I was going home, as regards to the cutlass we forgot at home, I met them on my way again. They stoned me and started calling me an evil child. Are you not an evil child? The rhetorical question came from Mazi Uche. Maybe he's never been told that his existence is abomination to his land. Mazi Obi added, but excuse me, oh. Mazi Uche, I wonder if you're having the same though as me. How can a little boy of Okachukwu beat up 2 boys who are a year older than him and keep them in this kind of condition? I disagree. It takes someone to be a witch or a wizard to do that. He continuously shake this head in disbelief. No way. Concur. Supported by Maxi Uche. And we have to act fast before this boy kills every child in aka land. He pointed directly at me and focused his gaze towards me. I'll personally make sure your life is cut short. It's a promise. He threatened me and they all left through the same direction. My mother drew me closer to her bosom, comforted me and took me inside as we continued crying. What happened today would forever remain in my heart. I pray I have the heart to forgive because my heart has been severely broken by my own people. Cogitation of my existence took away my sleep this night. I've been cogitation on what Mazi Uche and Mazi Obi said about me. Could I be evil? Am I truly an evil child? But I've neither noticed any diabolical power in me nor exhibited any abnormal character. But why do my people keep calling him evil child? Why did Mazi Uche threaten to cut my life short? What could that possibly mean? These questions were beyond my experience and too difficult for me to answer. Therefore I reserved them for my mother to answer when she woke up, because she seemed to have finally forgotten what happened. The time was 2:30 a.m. Early morning, yet I could sleep. I was sitting on a mat busy gazing at my mother, who was lying on the same mat with me, catching a good sleep. Little did I know she was having the same cogitation as me until she turned to me with a hiss of depression, complied with a question, "Why are you not sleeping, Okchukwu? Does it have to do with what happened yesterday?" "Yes, Mama." "Is there anything I need to know about myself you're not telling me? Why is everybody calling me an evil child, including my fellow children?" "Am I really evil, Mama?" I inquisitively asked. She closed my mouth with her one figures. "Don't ever say something like that again, my son. God forbid should you be evil. You are no evil, my son, and can never be evil. Then why is everybody calling me an evil child? In no distant time you'll be fed in full details what happened. But now isn't a good time to talk about this. Thank God you have a brave heart as your father. You have to sleep, my son." She convinced me to sleep, but it took very long time before I could do that. Darkness had finally paved way for daylight with a little thunderstorm on the sky. There was no sign of early morning sun, which meant that the weather was so misty. Elders in council were already seated in Igwe's palace deliberating on issue that has to do with the development of the village. Countless number of times they had written to the local government, telling them to come and construct our roads, and perhaps invite foreign or local investors in our village, since the local government could not attain to their needs. They went ahead to write directly to the state government. But unfortunately their letters had been turned down on 3 occasions by the state government as they were referred in their local government council. They added that if only had any prominent speaker or representative in the government, or better still their own local government, all these breach of protocols wouldn't have existed. After few hours of deliberation, my matter was presented by Mazi Uche, and each of elders articulated contemptuously about it. They all knew the evil that surrounded my birth. Even my fellow children seems to know about it. I had never been told anything by anybody, not even my mother, therefore I counted myself innocent of whatever they held against me. It is a surprise that the fowl should hold a grudge against the pot instead of the knife that killed it. Even if there was any evil surrounding my birth, was I the cause? Didn't create myself. Why would they treat my mother and I like animals? They believed my existence was a calamity in the land of aka Kioma. Kioma. 2 hefty men on their security outfit showed a total disregard the way they shouted my mother's name as they approached our compound. When my mother came out from inside the hut to see who the callers were, behold, they were Igwe's security men. Her whole body began to shiver. "Igwe summons you to his palace right away," the first security man disclosed. My mother, who tied wrapped around her waist, demanded to go in and change into something better. But her request was disrespectfully discarded by the second security man. "You worth nothing before the villagers, even if you are naked. You are going with us this minute." He dragged her out as the first security man prodded her with his right hand into movement. My mother was silently shedding tears as she was being poked and prodded to Igwe's palace by the 2 security men. I woozily came out from inside the hut with tears flowing down my cheeks. And watched them poke my mother until they were out of my sight. I wished I had an evil power to destroy these men. I pitied my mother for going through these pains and suffering because of my existence. I shouldn't have existed. Our troubles never came single, it never, but it poured. I had severalty had the thought of committing suicide, but I was advised by my mother to be brave even when facing the highest difficulty. My mother was given the last prod into Igwe's palace. She stood fretfully and shameful as regards to the wrapper she tied around her chest. She avoiding a gaze at already seated Igwe and chief priest. "Igwe," she humble greeted. "L smell evil." Chief priest begin with a wry visage. "Evil. I smell evil in the land of aka. Unrelenting calamity is about to befall this land, Igwe." "Kioma," Igwe called out. He was being fanned from the 2 sides by his bodyguards. Yes, Igwe," my mother humbly replied. "I hope you still remember our agreement with the gods." "I still remember, Igwe. I am sorry to tell you that the gods have changed their mind. They are impatient to wait till the time they requested for the child. They have demanded for the sacrifice in the next 4 market days. As you have heard from the chief priest that great calamity is about to befall out land, if we fail to offer the sacrifice. You only have less 4 weeks to prepare your child for the sacrifice. You may leave now. Igwe concluded. My mother cried like a baby. She left without uttering a word. She knew the decision was from the gods. Not Igwe. Everybody knows the decision of the gods is final. The clock struck 2 p.m. same day. My mother came back. Beyond the pale, I was already seated at backyard cogitation. I stood up immediately, with palpitations, and fixed my gaze at her but couldn't go to embrace her. She was really in a dazed state. She offered herself a seat. Without uttering a word, I stood for a while, gazing at her before going closer to her. She embraced me while sitting and made me one of her laps. Why did Igwe summon you to his palace? Mama, I questioned. To my surprise, I saw tears flowing down her cheeks. I became very sorry and pitiful because I thought I've aggravated her mood with my question. It's nothing, my son. She dried her tears. He only warned me about the incident that happened between you and those boys. I'm sorry, Mama. I begin with words of apology. I'm sorry you have to go through this embarrassment because of me. I'll never fight again. I promise. It's all right, my son. But I still want you to be brave as your father no matter what happens. I will, Mama. Good boy. Now go and get me a bucket of water to take my bath. Have you taken yours? No, Mama. I replied. And I'm sure you've not eaten anything as well, am I right? I was already on my way to get her bucket of water to take her bath when she threw that question, and I answered from the distance, yes, Mama. Oh my God. Do you want to starve yourself? That was a rhetorical question that required no answer. She stood up and made inside after me. Many thoughts occupied my mother's mind, but she didn't know about how to let it out. That brings me to a quote by Emmanuel Joy, which he says, "Be careful not to swallow your thoughts. Your life might be inside." Of course, my mother had swallowed her thoughts a lot, and I prayed her life didn't follow. It's always unfair to swallow your thoughts and die silently when you've got someone confidential and reliable to discuss your problem with. For sure, my mother can rely on me. She was my best friend, but the reason that made her keep so many things from me were best known to her. She always came up with excuse that I was still a little boy. She had promised to tell me when the time was right, but I could see her being uncomfortable every minute of the day. It was 7:15 a.m. fine following morning. The weather was very bright and the sun had already approved, but too harsh on people. Leaves and tiny branches of trees were being blown around by wind. Goats bleated. Birds chirped to its different times. Cock crowed and noisy hens with their chicks moved from side to side in search of food. My mother and I had already prepared to leave for the market. On my head was a basket of vegetable leaves, and my mother was carrying a big plastic bowl containing tubers of yam. My son. We stopped for a while as she talked to me. I've been waiting for to come of age, so I can tell you what I've been keeping behind you for years. But since things have turned out to be this way, I think it's time I unveil to you the mystique surrounded your birth and how your father died, but that should be reserved till we come back, okay? Okay, Mama. I nodded in agreement. The thought of the mystique surrounded my birth and how my father died gave me palpitations. I became completely agitated. The hunger of going to market left me immediately. My legs became weak on the ground. My level of fear continually increased every second. What am I afraid of? By the way, I could never answer that question. I pretended so my mother wouldn't notice my state of discomfort. Just about to exit our compound, Mazi Uche, who was carrying his dead son, led a group of youths, and also with them were minority of teenagers and children of my age. Some were holding leaves by different trees, while some were holding placards with many different inscriptions on it. The evil child must die. Okchukwu must die. Kill no more. The evil child. And many other unmasked inscriptions. They sang enigmatically as sign of protest and shortened the distance between them and us. My mother and I became practically maladjusted. Our gaze at each other clustered. They finally came closer. Mazi Uche dropped his dead son on the floor and he laid inanimmately. As Mazi Uche was about to talk, the youth leader gestured the group to quietness. This is your follow child whom you kill with your evil power, he started. With a misty-eyed eye, they brought him for you to feast on his dead body since you're a vulture. Since ever you beat him up he has been struggling with his life until his death. Maybe you were asked to bring him to your kingdom. Why not take 2 of us with you now? My mother and I became helpless. We cried like babies. Death should come now. Because I've given up on this life, I didn't want to live anymore. I wished I was the boy who laid inanimmately on the floor. Isn't it better to die than to live this way? This life doesn't worth living. I wished I hadn't existed in this world. I knew my mother must thinking the same way too. The youth leader faced the group and began, with words of desolation, we all know that this woman and her son are evil and do not deserve to live in this land. Or should we let them live and continue to kill us? The group shouted simultaneously. No. Youth leader continued. When a witch woman wakes up very early in the middle of night and beings to search for her wrestling belt under the bed, you ought not to be told that she is looking for pot of charm to go and negotiate with Saruj, the spirit wrestler. And if Saruj request for a wrestling competition and she fortunately wins, that means she is going to send to an exile with terrible and mysterious boils and skin pores. But if unfortunately she lose out the completion, that means she is going straight to hell to confront devil himself. For more wrestling, the youth leader proceeded to pushing down them goods on our heads respectively. My mother was forced to back the dead body as she was being poked and prodded. I was beaten and prodded by everyone to Igwe's palace. Mazi Obi was revealed with his son in the shrine, appealing with chief priest to fortify his son against death. He told the chief priest that the first target. The chief priest, after saying some enchantment, gave him a charm his son would always in his pocket anywhere he would go. We finally arrived in Igwe's palace. We were forced to sit on the bare floor after releasing the dead body from my mother's back. We had sustained bruises and injuries that made us uncomfortable sitting on the floor. Igwe, on hearing the protest song, came out from his palace to know what the protest song was all about. He saw us sitting on the floor, in despair as if we're going to die in the next 5 minutes. He apologized to the group to ease their grief. He also made them understand that we are food for the gods in the next 4 weeks and don't deserve to be treated the way we did because the gods might get angry. He finally pleaded with them to dismiss to their various homes and also assured them that the matter would be meticulously handled. Youth leader emerged before the group. The Igwe has spoken and he has spoken well. We shall all return to our various homes, but if in the next 4 weeks this evil child is not destroyed, we shall return here in Igwe's palace with more serious protest. And he must die by our unanimous hands. Youth. No nonsense. The group of youths echoed. They began with their protest song and left in group. Igwe shook his head and made inside the palace with Mazi Uche. 5 guardsmen came out in no distant time and took us away. Already seated in Igwe's palace were elders in council. They gathered in deliberate on issue concerning me and my mother. Already standing with words on his lips were Mazi Uche. My son died because he was beaten by that evil child who calls himself Okchukwu. This nonsense has already gotten to our nerves, and we must act fast to put an end to it before it becomes too late. I am very much convinced that this boy is not ready to stop until his mission is completed. Take it or leave it. He's not going to stop until we're dead. His is destroy this land. He got seated. Mazi Obi stood. Mazi Uche has spoken wisely. Like the gods, even my own son has been beating with his life since after he was beaten by that evil child. I have taken him to dismissed the Great One. Yet the sickness continues. Shall we continue to fold our arms and watch our children die one after the other? Uru Tafiakwa. The Council of Elders responded with great disapproval and disgustedly snapped their fingers. I've heard you all. Igwe started. But the question is, what do we do? Since the boy is still going to be served as meal to gods in the next 4 NKWO market days. Mazi Leo cleared his throat and stood up. The truth is that the gods are always hungry. Even if boy sacrificed to them. Right now I don't think there would be any complaint from them. He got seated. Mazi Ease stood. Mazi Leo has spoken excellently well. Even the gods appreciate what is good. Let's destroy this boy now. Before he destroys our land. He got seated. Mazi Hugo stood. You all have spoken well. Like elders you are. But I also deem fit necessary. We employ the opinion of chief priest. Before we come to conclusion. He took a gaze at everybody. As they all nodded in agreement. They were all distracted and fixed their gaze at the only entrance door of the palace hole. The chief priest entered with his staff being struck on the floor each time he made a step. The gods shall never be forced to eat when they are not hungry. The chief priest said as he drew closer to the elders in council. It is equivalent to a mother trying to force food into her baby's mouth, when she knows very well that her baby is not hungry. The baby cries. But the mother doesn't know the outcome of cry. It invites pain and sorrow into the home. It'll cause more harm and sorrow to the land of aka if the gods are forced to eat. The boy and his mother should be enclosed in a cage and must be served food only but once daily until next 4 NKWO market days when the gods shall desire to feast on the evil child. The gods have spoken. He continued with his enchantment and exited the palace. Minus the brain and count the head useless. To say my mother and I were half dead was an understatement because we were already in the land of the dead. We had been humiliated, disgraced and dishonored by our own people. We were enclosed in a cage for the past 2 weeks and we seemed to have been brainstormed because we can't even think of anything else than crying. Even dogs received better treatment than we did. Sometimes we were being served food remained by dogs. I had on several occasions thought of committing suicide but my mother kept telling me, be strong, be strong. I was tried of being strong. I really wanted to end it immediately because I knew my mother was suffering because of me. An innocent woman. Life is worthless without joy. There was a day I experienced joy in my life. My life was worthless. I don't deserve to live. It was 2 days and we had never been served any food. I became very hungry that I thought was going to die. Even my heart was so strong and open to receive death, but the question remained, where was the death? It had refused to come and take me. I never believed my mother could be this strong. She was the reason I still lived. Another 2 weeks had gone and it was just 6 days remaining for the gods to feast on my body. I was so strong knowing that all of us would eventually die, someday. What would happen to my mother after my death remained my daily question. She would definitely not survive it. I pitied her always. I wished I could know the mystique surrounding my birth before I die, but how would I ask my mother knowing her state of agony was beyond description? I never knew she was thinking the same thing as well. She had always wanted to tell me but she was afraid if was really in the mood for that. She finally voiced it out after gathered the courage. Okchukwu, I knew now isn't the right time to start saying this. My mother finally said. My conscience wouldn't let me keep this secret to myself even when I know you will die soon. She cried deeply and wiped her tears away. However, I deem it necessary and important you know the mystique surrounded your birth. For I know with this confession your soul will be feel free after your death. We both shed tears like babies. She contacted. It was never your fault, my son. But please have it in mind that you will never take vengeance to the spirit world or anywhere you might be going. She was distracted by the protest song heard inside. Igwe compound by the youth of the village. Just the fear of the process song gave us palpitations. What could have happened again? Everybody really wished me death. Even my fellow children. In no distant time 2 guardsmen came to take me away. I was crying and calling my mother to save me. My mother bitterly cried and pleaded on my behalf but she couldn't save me. They brought me before the presence of the youths of the village. I was brutally beaten and mercilessly stoned by the youths till almost died. Oh God, I have suffered. Please let me die. I cried out, even if was an evil child. Did I have to suffer this way? What was my offense this time around? Uzana, the son of Mazi Obi, is dead. I beard the consequence of any death that occurred in the land of aka even the death of a chicken. I suddenly became death that killed people. At night, I was carried back into the cage. My breath was gradually sizing and my eyes were swollen that I couldn't see anything. I busted out a cry. She almost killed herself. To her, whole thing was getting out of hand and something must be done to end it all. The question remained, what can be done to end it all if not by killing ourselves? We never thought of escape since the security men never forgot to lock the cage after dropping our food inside. The youth had deplorably snatched from me the opportunity to know the mystique surrounding my birth before I die. My heart was full of sorrow and revenge. Could I never forgive to them? This is a question I would have to answer in the spirit world. If I should die now, I would make sure my spirit hunts every single thing in aka land. Even an ant will suffer from my vengeance. This was what had occupied my memory since after I was brutally and mercilessly beaten by the youths. The next morning, just 4 days before my death, villagers including Igwe and his council of elders had all gathered at the village square. Chief priest, Igwe and his council of elders were seated and every other person was standing in a circular from. We were positioned in the middle of the circle. After a murmuring and booing from the villagers, Igwe finally gestured them to a silent. He addressed them for a while, before handing over to the chief priest to round off. In their speeches, they told the villagers to rejoice. For peace was about to attain in the land of aka, as the gods were impatient to wait for the remaining 4 days, before I could be sacrificed. Therefore they had demanded that the sacrifice day be tomorrow. I shall die tomorrow. My mother almost cried her eyes out. My heart was full of agony. I could not cry, because my eyes were still covered with bruises. As regards to the deadly beatings by the youths, I prefer to die than to live a worthless life, full of sorrow, agony, hardship, and most of all brutality. Tomorrow shall mark the end of my life, I grievously said inside of me. It was a misty afternoon, same day, 2:30 p.m. Leaves and some tiny branches of trees were dancing to the tones of the atmosphere. Already seated in the shrine was the chief priest. He was making some enchantments as a result of consulting the gods of the land. Mazi Obi entered in no distant time after removing his slippers. He remained standing and silent as nobody would interrupt the consultation of the gods. Chief priest gestured him to sit. After the consultation and requested to know what has brought him to the shrine, Mazi Obi, after praising the chief priest, voiced out his reason of visiting the shrine. He cleared his throat and started of, the dog that boasts of eating excrete must be sent to the toilet. Kioma and her son should be sent to the toilet, so they can eat enough excreta. Is it not the same thing? They have boasted of being a witch and a wizard respectively. And they should be sent to blood-sucking world so they can fill their stomach with blood. What I mean is that, Kioma should be sacrificed together with her son. If we kill a mother lion that has been attacking the village and let the species live, that means we are still going to suffer by the hands of the species when it matures. But if we totally eradicate the threat by killing the mother lion and her species, that means we'll go home and snore white sleeping. The gods are wiser than why, oh you or Mazi Obi? Chief priest replied. No one, I mean nobody, not even the greatest, change the decision of the gods. Go home, Mazi Obi, and bury that option of yours in the deepest of your mind. Otherwise, the gods will hunt you down for calling them inferior. But I never did call them inferior. I only Mazi Obi splutters out of fear. Goo. Chief priest gruffly butted in. Mazi Obi quickly and frightfully ran out of the shrine after gathering his slippers. The time had gone 2:40 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. The sky was gradually turning dark. Though initially, the weather was not bright, everybody was exceedingly excited, knowing that their sorrows and the cause of their untimely death would soon be a thing of history by tomorrow afternoon. They were all getting prepared to witness the great, even and of course the evil child would soon depart their society. My awaiting death had become the talk of the town. I might give up the ghost before the sacrificial day being tomorrow, the way I saw myself, because we had never been served food since 4 days now. They only managed to give us water, which had become our only source of livelihood. However, the beating from the youth was not helping my condition at all. The fear of what would happen to my mother after my death was the reason I was still alive. Darkness had masterfully possessed the sky. The time was accurately 9:20 p.m. Everyone had seemingly gone far asleep, except the guardsmen who were on duty of guarding us. Shortly and surprisingly, 2 plates of jollof rice, without either meat or fish in it, were brought before us by a guardsman. He unlocked the cage, kept the food before us, jammed the door, dropped a comment, then left. His comment was, "Enjoy your last meal, little wizard, and prepare yourself tomorrow to meet the devil." The comment got me into thinking whether the food was poisoned, but I'm still going to die tomorrow after all, I said to myself. Without considering if the food was poisoned or not, I feasted on it because I was gradually giving up my breath out of hunger. I was glad my mother also ate her food well. Of course she was as hungry as I was. The time became approximately 11 p.m. No one had come to check on us. Even the 4 guardsmen on duty were fast asleep. To our surprise, something that had never happened before occurred tonight. The cage was left unlocked by the guardsman who was here for drop food for us couple of hours ago. After several minutes of cogitation, we decided to escape since we knew all the short cuts in aka land. Initially my mother suggested I escape alone, but insisted we must escape together if fear roads. We weren't actually running, but it seemed like running to me because we were putting in our whole strength to be able to walk. The time had gone from 11:40 p.m. to 1:05 am. There was no moonlight, therefore we couldn't picture things clearly. I became weak and nearly gave up when my mother was bitten by a snake. She sat on the bare ground, swallowing her pain. She avoided shouting because she knew we might be implicated if she did. It must be painful. I noticed the pain on her face. I began to cry, and so was she. She urged me to keep going, but I disagreed and waited until the wound was dressed. She requested for a particular leaf. I got it for her. She applied it on the wound and tied it with a piece of cloth seen beside her. After some minutes of rest, we started our journey. The time was 3 a.m. A hunter and possibly Mozzie Obi spotted us from afar with his touchlight and began to make it quick step towards us. My mother could neither run nor walk quickly. She suggested I run as quickly as my legs can carry through the right direction, so she can take the left direction in order to confuse Mozzie Obi. Little did I know as a child that she had just confused me to escape alone. She knew if we took the same direction, possibly we must be captured by Mozzie Obi. Therefore she decided to distract Mozzie Obi with herself. The journey became more difficult for me walking alone in the bush. But do I have a choice? The answer is no. What would happen to my mother if captured by Mozzie Obi was occupied my memory. Even though I was a child, but I was still a man. I must not let emotions destroy my vision. I became stronger after this thought and started my journey to nowhere. The time had gone from 3 am to 6:30 am. I seemed to have covered a far distance. I gave myself a little rest after discovering I was no longer in aka village. I was now walking tiredly on a major road. Not longer had I walked. I heard a sound on a car coming behind me. I turned back. It was a Toyota pickup carrying some barrels of palm oil. I waved the car to stop. Lucky to me, he stopped. Guess what happened? He gestured me to enter, and we drove off. 8 am same day. The weather was very bright, and people had already resumed their daily routine. The morning sun was still struggling to appear. The Good Samaritan who picked me the way finally stopped me on a very busy road, junction. He also gave me 5,000 naira to add to his generosity. I came down looking ragged. I saw 5 buses loading passengers going to different cities. I clearly heard the loaders calling Aba, Lagos, Yosh, Owerri respectively. After some minutes of cogitation on which bus to enter, I approached Yosh, but unfortunately they mistook me a little mad boy. I went to a going to Owerri. And the same thing occurred. I finally landed myself inside Lagos bus after giving it trial. We took off at about 9:05 a.m. after the bus fully loaded with passengers. While inside the bus, I had become tired of sitting and anticipating to seeing our bus land in Lagos. It was obvious that my bad odor was making everybody inside the bus unfortunately, but thanks God they were all cooperative. I never knew from east to west was quite a far journey. I was very excited when I was told we've finally arrived Lagos. There was heavy traffic jam on the road, so we got to the last bus stop Oshodi at 6:30 p.m. I came down and careful took a glance at different corners of the environment. It was totally strange to me. By the time of the night, when everyone should be in sleeping, everywhere was still very busy. If not as busy as hell. Even though I had never been there before, but had been told how busy fire in hell can burn. I saw vehicle both big and small on a very long queue, and each struggling to keep pace with vehicle in front to avoid being overtaken by a car from behind. I found it very funny and busy entertainment my eyes by watching the vehicles struggle each other. I smiled and almost got myself laughing for the first time since 1 year, when I saw a car hit by another car from behind. The owner of the crashed car violently dismounted from his car and made for the man who just crashed his car. The other man also came down. I was expecting the man who just crashed somebody's car to start with words of apology, but the reverse was the case. He began to claim right as well. Because of that, a heavy face off arose between the two parties. Just 50 seconds of the face off, they were rounded by numerous numbers of people. I was surprised and began to ask myself where the people came from. My excitement instantly turned to fear when I saw another scene being created by 2 rugged guys who started fighting themselves violently with broken bottles. I expected people to round then and quench the fight. Like they did to other parties, but nobody ever showed up. I became more frightened when I saw a multitude of people seriously and cruelty running to my direction. Some had their bags thrown on the floor, some were running barefooted, while some were even shouting and screaming as they ran. I quickly joined the race. Even the 2 fighters also joined the race. Just a little while after the race had stopped, I took my time to dictate the cause of the running. Believe me, nothing, not even an ant was chasing anybody. I became annoyed and blamed myself for coming to Lagos instead of Yosh. I never knew Lagos was as rascal as this. I became tired and started feeling pain again after the race. After an hour or searching for a place to sleep, I finally landed myself inside Izuchukwu Park. I woke up as early as 5:30 a.m. The next morning, the first thing I did was to search my pocket to see if my 3,500 number 3,500 was still there, but believe me, I saw my money no more. I busted out a cry. How to eat this morning took possession of my thinking. The thought of where to get money to eat really made me think about my mother. Could she have been dead by now? Should I have escaped without her? Does this life really means anything without my mother? Guilty conscience nearly dragged me to my early grave. Since weeping could not solve my problem, I stopped. However, I was becoming very hungry. The time had shifted to 6:45 a.m. I just stopped crying, but during my time of crying, I cried for almost an hour with deep voice. As a child, nobody ever come to me to know why I was crying. I regretted this kind of city I had gotten myself into. If I could cry for almost an hour and nobody cared to know why I was crying as a child, I wonder who would care to give me money to eat in this rascal city. I became jealous when I saw my fellow children backing their school bags going to their various schools. Some were carried by school buses from their various homes to school. I had a dream of going to school, but was never privileged. I was busy moving from one person to another begging for money to eat this morning, but unfortunately, everyone mistook me as a little mad boy. If they continue to take me as a mad boy, how would I succeed in this city? I tried in several ways to explain to them. I was never a mad boy, but due to my bad odor and how tattered my clothes were, nobody ever believed me. People almost got me frustrated, but I didn't give up. I kept on using my last strength to beg for help. A very young guy of about 22 years finally helped me with 2,500 naira, number 2,500. Quickly rushing to fast food center, ate 500 naira rice and saved the remaining 2,000 naira for the next time. The money really gave me courage a lot. It showed me there were still nice and generous people out there. I began to think big for myself. I must succeed in this city, no matter how rugged it is. I don't need to rely on people to eat. I'm too hard working for than just 2-3 days of my stay in Lagos. I was popularly known as the little mad boy. Even my fellow children called me this name. I was never angry with the name, rather it gave me more courage. I said to myself, degree one day everyone will know I'm not mad. It is circumstance that made me look like a mad boy. It will soon become a history. This was my belief. I saw some people, including children, hawking sachet pure water. I bravely approached one of them, made inquiry where they normally buy it. I was directed and I took off immediately. Some minutes later, I got there and met people already buying. I went directly to the seller, made my request known to her. She furiously chased me out of her shop because she thought I was a mad boy. I went to the second shop and was chased away like a mad person. The third shop I entered also rejected me. I didn't give up. I went ahead to give the fourth shop trial, but unfortunately the seller refused to sell for me. Mentally, I almost gave up. I exhaled in distress, made for a particular place and sat quietly to rest. This Lagos is nothing different from my village. It is dominated by wicked people. No one is willing to help. A city where there is a slim chance of survival for ordinary people. The rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer is generally Nigeria's code of conduct, but mostly practiced in Lagos. The thought of how to survive occupied my memory. Just about to leave after few minutes of resting, something said to me, why not try somewhere else? You might be lucky. I decided to try again, but not in that street again. Not longer had I walked and sighted a young boy of about 4 years old carrying a small bowl containing plastic and soft drinks of different brands on the head. He told me everything I needed to know about the business, including when they brought it after I required from him. I headed to the place praying not to be turned down again. Lucky me, the woman accepted to sell for me. Mentally, after telling her my story, she asked me to repeat tomorrow, because cold drinks had just finished. Not even my joyful mood can describe how happy I was. Darkness gradually possessed the sky. Where to sleep became my problem. Since I was chased away from the Moses Park, I finally found a place to sleep. Guess where? Ajej under bridge. I woke up 7 am the next morning. I bought 10 naira chewing stick in order to get my teeth brushed up. I had 100 naira left for me to spend. I was becoming hungry because I hadn't had my meal since last night. I didn't want to spend the money unwisely, therefore I waited for time to come up so I can fill my stomach with biscuits. I hid the remaining chewing stick somewhere and started towards the shop. The place was a bit far but can be trekked. I trekked down to the place just to save cost. I got there around 8 am. Normally you have to go there with your own bowl but one-headed empty-handed. Unfortunately for me the woman provided me with a bowl. Joy took over me, and I left for hawking after loading the bowl with soft drinks of different brands. At the end of the day, I came back without selling anything. Out of the fully loaded drinks. Nobody accepted to buy from me. Everybody mistook me as a mad boy. I was very hungry. But I only 50 naira left on me. How would I feed tomorrow? If I should spend this money this night, I decided to sleep with an empty stomach and save the money for tomorrow. I left for Ayabisi's shop the next morning at 6:30 a.m. Thank God she didn't lose faith in me. She loaded another bowl of mineral water for me. I gladly left, praying to sell at least some of it. But today became worse than I imagined. Flower naughty guys called aid. Collected super commando energy drink each from my bowl while on my head. I became very excited because I thought they were going to pay me. It turned out something different when they asked me to leave without money. When I requested for my money, gave me a sound slap on my cheek and a heavy knock on my head respectively. I busted out a cry and tried to prove obstinate, but I was given a better beating by then. All through my misunderstanding with them, nobody ever came to know what the problem was. I trembled on how cruel this Lagos is. It is really a collection of psychopathic patients. Darkness was gradually taking over the sky. I began to panic on what to tell Ayabisi. I finally gathered courage, made for the shop, disclosed what transpired between me and those Alay boys. I expected she got mad at me, but she only said a few words to me. This is Lagos. Shine your eyes. Does this kind of person really exist in this cruel city of Lagos? I was surprised. Hungry was already in me. So I bought biscuits with my last 50 naira and filled my stomach with it. What tomorrow would bring was what I didn't know, but I prayed it favored me. Just about to sleep, a young boy of 20 years old, probably Ola, approached me. Hey, wake up, the boy said and tapped me thrice on my leg. I quickly woke up in fear. For the past 2 weeks, I've been seeing you occupying this duplex alone. Who did you pay your house rent to? Agent and agreement fees are paid directly to me, but since you moved in, I've not seen any money yet. Who did you pay to? His voice was very coarse and Harish that I became confused. I paid to, I stammered confusingly. Paid to who? Speak fast, let me go and collect my money from the person immediately, before he spends the whole money. His voice was very harsh and loud. I busted out a cry. I paid to nobody. Do you used to smoke weed? He asked with his eyes widely open. Ye, sir. But no, sir. I didn't know you have pay before sleep under bridge. I confusingly replied in tears. Ah, he loudly shouted and began to quake vehemently. You didn't know you have to pay before occupy somebody's property? Is this a kind of joke or what? Or are you mad? I quickly replied confusingly, yes, I am mad but not too much, sir. People call me little mad boy. Shut up. I don't care if you are mad or not. At least you still speak with your senses. I am the caretaker of this duplex you are occupying, and all house rent, including agent and agreement fees, are paid to me. The former occupant of this duplex was given quite notice because of his inability to meet up with his house rent. I will forgive you for not paying you house rent before packing in, because you are a little boy. But do you have the money now? I have no money, sir. Looks at this boy. Ooh. Do you think I am here to joke with you? I will treat your frick up now if you don't comply. He ordered me to stand up. When I stood, searched me thoroughly and found no money. What is your name? He asked. Okakiwu, I replied. How old are you? 11 years old. I will let you live in this duplex alone, one condition. He ordered me to sit and he sat with me. I will give you the opportunity to make big money by working with me. But my fear is that you are not a clever boy. Can you steal? He asked, focusing his gaze at my eyes. No, sir. I have never stolen before. I replied with fear. Don't worry, I will teach you how to steal. By the time I am done with you, I bet you will become a professional thief. But I'm a new person in this Lagos, sir. Try to be a smart boy. You have nothing to worry about. Besides, I've got your back. I run this city and make things happen in this city. I decided what happened in this Lagos, so do not be afraid. This is Lagos. Oh, if you want to succeed, you have to shine your eyes well. Oh. Just a day of business with me, you will go home with the sum of 20,000 naira. Think of what 20,000 naira can do for you. You will probably change your clothes and, most importantly, feed well. Pickpocket is not a crime in Lagos State. It happened to be one of the best and lucrative businesses in this city. Almost everybody does it. I will give you only but this night to think about it, and we shall be leaving tomorrow morning for the park to commence work immediately. Shine your eyes. He left. Cogitation was the next thing I noticed in me. I was thinking what 50 naira could do for me. Perhaps God might want to use this offer to console me for all my misadventure, but stealing is never the way of God. What do I do, since I have been unlucky since I was born? I was really confused. I finally made up my mind to follow him to wherever he may go tomorrow. Meanwhile, he has threatened to stop me from sleeping under the bridge when he claimed to be his property. I was never comfortable while sleeping. A particular quote by Emmanuel Leonard kept repeating in my heart: learn to live life well. Otherwise, life will learn to leave you soon. I always considered this quote each time evil thought came to exist in my heart. The quote had kept me going. I decided not to involve myself in such an evil act. I slept peacefully, but mindfully, because I would have to wake up early in the morning. I woke up around 6 a.m., brushed up my teeth, and thought it wise to leave the place before the boys arrived. The road had already become busy as early as 6 a.m. Wandered aimlessly from place to place, waiting for time to come up so I can start going to Aya Bissi's shop. I made for the shop finally around 7:05 a.m. I waited for few minutes before Aya Bissi came. She loaded the drinks for me, as usual, and I left. I couldn't believe what today had brought. No, even a drink came back with me. I would have sold my container if it was placed on sale. I became glad because I made a little profit. Aya Bissi was also very happy for my progress. I told her about the boy last night, and she provided me with a place to sleep inside her shop. The time was 5:03 p.m. I went to Ifako Market Ajej and bought myself a shot and a t-shirt so people would stop calling me the little mad boy. Aya Bissi was very excited to see me on a new dress. I left for hawking and also came back with a good testimony. I sold everything. My progress so far has boosted my effort. I became happy way things were going. At about 7:30 a.m. I had already been on the road hustling. All this effort was for my mother. My plan was to bring her over to Lagos if at all she was still alive. I prayed she remained alive. But my village people were very heartless. They might have her killed in place of me. Let God judge them for their wickedness towards me and my mother. The time had clocked 2:20 p.m. I had only few drinks left to be sold. The sun was too harsh, and I needed to rest. I began to track the back of a particular building. I had never been there. Since I started hawking, I had taken a long walk, yet I had spotted on one. Not even my fellow hawkers, who were desperate to enter any place provided they'll make sales. I was never afraid because I needed some rest and not to make sales. Besides, the environment was full of ventilation even though it was stinky. I never knew that nobody was allowed to enter there. I became afraid, wanted to run back when I saw some group of hoodlums smoking weed. One of them spotted me and ordered me to come back. I came back shivering. What and give you moral to enter our cabal? He questioned in pidgin English. I shivered. Nothing, sir. I was looking for a place to rest. If no be say you be small boy, we for kill you here. The threatening came from another gangster who was sitting and enjoying his smoke. I'll never come back here again, sir. Forgive me, sir, apologized with misty eyed coupled with great fear. Weddin' you car for head self? The question came from the first gangster who stopped me. He was also seated and smoking. Mineral, sir, I replied. Do you mineral no get name? I have only Pepsi, Super Commando, American Cola, Sprite, Fanta, and smooth how many day dia, 9 sir. I replied. Carry come down. He ordered. I quickly brought it down. He asked few of his colleagues who were interested in the drink and ordered me share it, amongst them starting from him. He then asked me to sit down and have some rest. I sat down uncomfortably on a block, seen by the side as I watched them smoke. Breeze was not helping my condition the way it was directing the smoke straight to my nostril. I didn't show any sign of discomfort so as to be recommended by then. I later got the recommendation from one of the gangster who nicely remarked me as being a strong boy. I was busy thinking of my drinks and money I had on me. They may refuse to pay me and might even rob me of the little money I had on me. Initially I took them as aid boys, but they turned out to be a group more dangerous than I thought. They were hire killers, a group of gangsters who kill for money. Right before my presence they were plotting the elimination of the Ikeja local government chairman. I began to panic but I didn't let them notice my state of anxiety. I was surprised when I was asked how much my money was by the first gangster who stopped me. I disclosed the amount he paid me, and even asked me to keep the balance. I was dismissed and asked to come again next tomorrow. They seemed to have liked me, but it's dangerous associating with this kind of people. I was full of though as I headed to Aya Bissie's shop. I was asked to come next tomorrow, and not tomorrow, because their operation would be carried out by 5 p.m. tomorrow. I became confused on what to do. Should I tell somebody about this? No, I disagreed after giving it a second thought. I might get myself implicated. I blamed myself for going there in the first place. Does God really want to use me to spare tire life of this Ikeja local government chairman? But how do I do that? I was full of though. I took the wrong direction on my way to Aya Bissie's shop as a result of being in deep thought. I got to Aya Bissie's shop, balanced my account, and weakly made for a chair seen very close to the shop and sat down, thoughtfully. Darkness had successfully taken possession of the sky and I hadn't concluded on what to do tomorrow. I tried severally to force myself to sleep but couldn't. I was awake cogitating on the kind of action to take tomorrow. If I involve myself in this, I might get myself killed by those hire loop killers. Good. I'm confused. What should I do? If I had known I wouldn't have gone there in the first place. Should I know about this and still allow the Ikeja local government chairman killed? I might die of guilty conscience. I didn't sleep all through the night. Around 6 a.m., I brushed my teeth and took my shower. Darkness had given way for light to take over the day. Aya Bissie came out. I was always the first tea to be served before others. I left for Hawking. 1:30 p.m. I sold the last drink in my container. I now used a bigger container. I quickly started towards Aya Bissie's shop, still beetling with my thought. I bravely made up my mind on what to do. After making some inquiries, I started towards the local government building around 4 p.m. Due to traffic jam, I got there around 4:30 p.m. I painted my face with a charcoal thus I wouldn't be recognized by anyone. On my head was a face cap. I just thought to give my face a good cover. Chairman was informed about my visit after so many questions and delay from his security men. The time had shifted to 5 p.m. because I insisted firmly on seeing the chairman face to face. He permitted me into his office. I came in with my face downward. Yes, little boy, to what do I? Chairman was trying to question me, and I butted in immediately. Chairman, you have only 10 minutes to escape from this building. Your life is involved. Disclosed. How do you mean? Can you explain that? He was still splitting when I scurried outside immediately. When I discovered I had covered a little distance from the offices, but still inside the compound, I took to my heels. Chairman glanced at his wristwatch. It was already 5:30 p.m. He scurried outside but couldn't see me again. He became more confused. On my way to Aya Bissie's shop, I disposed the cap, washed away the charcoal on my face with water and later thought it wise to head straight to Ajej market, to get myself a new dress. Instead of going to Aya Bissie's shop first, Aya Bissie was glad to see change into another dress. When I came back around 6 p.m. It wasn't long I came back. The radio announced that the Ikea local government building was attacked by fully armed robbers. Everybody around shouted, and it became the talk of the moment. According to the announcement, only 5 people were killed. I prayed the chairman shouldn't be among the 5 people killed, so my effort wouldn't be waste. Radio came back again with the same news in 2 minutes' time. It was announced that the target of the armed robbers was to eliminate the life of the Ikeja local government chairman but failed to succeed. It was also said that the chairman escaped before the armed robbers could get there. I chuckled from where I seated. My effort was not a waste after all. I became excited. Now peacefully snore while sleeping this night. Because of how misty today's morning was, it was undoubtedly clear there would be rain. The rain later came and didn't stop until 2.05 petameters. Neither I nor Aya Bissie's other customers went for hawking today because of the rain. I wonder how the hire killers would I be feeling now. What if they found out I was the cause of their failure? They would probably skin me alive. I guessed. I expected to hear from the newscaster on radio that a little boy masterminded the escape of the Ikeja local government chairman. But such thing was never mentioned. Maybe the chairman knew the dangers attached and decided to keep it secret. I was glad that such thing was never mentioned. Otherwise the hire killers would hunt me down. They were very kind to me that day, but conscience couldn't let me watch them do what is inhuman. They asked me to come back, but fear couldn't let me go. I wish I could go, just in case they have another person in their agenda. Risky as it is, if you are afraid of taking chances, there is no way you can succeed. I bravely made up my mind to give them a visit tomorrow. I took off with a bowl full of mineral water the next morning. I thought today would be profitable like other days. But I turned out to be something else. It had bought a very had market to me. It was 12 p.m. already, yet I was unable to sail up to even drinks. I had become tired of walking around without seeing buyers. The had market made me think of going to the hire killer's joint. To see if they could buy from me. My feeling were more of agitation than that of gid as I headed to the hire killer's joint. I finally got there. I was warmly welcomed by them. One of them asked me to share the remaining drinks amongst the interested persons. I did as they wanted it. I proceeded to sitting on a block scene beside me. I was cooling the pressure of the day with a Fanta I received from them as a benefit of being in their gathering. They were discussing with their own personal terms. To unable the second party understand their language clearly. I was wise enough to comprehend their discussion very slightly. You can't believe this. They were plotting the elimination of the state governor by 8 p.m. today. I became shocked. They later paid and dismissed me. If they succeed in killing the state governor, there would be a great conflict and confusion in the state. It would definitely affect everyone in the state, including myself. Fear gripped me even the more. The time already 6 p.m. I began to make some inquiries on how to locate the governor's house. I knew it was very difficult to see the governor, but I also knew with determination and good effort you can achieve whatever you want. I started my journey to the governor's house around 6:45 p.m. I arrived at 7:15 p.m. Commercial buses normally stopped a bit far from the governor's house. Fear nearly discouraged me from continuing the journey, but I gathered courage after some minutes and trekked down to the governor's house. On getting to the gate, a soldier with a long gun halted me. He interrogated me and discovered I was eager and desperate to see the governor. The time had shifted to 7:40 p.m. and there was no time left for me to spend. Other soldier, policemen and mopple rounded me and requested to know why I wanted to see the governor, but I insisted to see him person. After giving me a thorough searching, they tried to chase me away, but I refused. The time had gone to 7:50 p.m. Only 10 minutes left. I was telling them it's important I see the governor, otherwise adversity would be the portion of this great city. They saw me as a little child. Therefore no of them gave me a listening ear. After a convoluted disagreement amongst us, the governor, who was on convoy of about 8 exotic jeeps, accelerated slowly outside the compound, saw what was going on, and decided to hear from me. He was in the 4th jeep. "Good evening, His Excellency," I greeted after approaching him. "Good evening, my boy. How are you?" he replied after he had wound down his door glass. "I am very well, thank you, sir," I replied. "Okay. So what is it you want me to do for you?" he asked. "I presume you are going for an executive meeting, sir." "Yes, I am." "But how did you know about that?" he surprisingly asked. "You're not safe, sir. You're about to be attacked. By 9 p.m. in Church Street. Some group of gangsters have plotted your death. And they are well armed beyond your imagination, sir. Your security men can never beat them. So I suggest you cancel the meeting, sir. But just in case you still want to test my trust, worthless, you can quit going with them, but let them go and see how they escape the attack." "But how did you know about this?" he confusingly asked. "Is not necessary, sir. I'm also happy to see you in person, sir. Good luck." I ran out and stopped after remembering something else to tell him. I ran back. "Please, sir, be careful with the people you dine with, especially Mr. Alabunmi Oriomi. He is your worst enemy." I ran speedily to the bus stop and entered a commercial bus. The governor decided to test my trust. Worthless, he dismounted from his jeep and asked the rest to continue the journey on convoy. Not quite long they left, the news came to the governor. It happened as I said. No one on the convoy survived. I got to Aya Bissie's shop at about 10:30 p.m. She had already looked the shop and gone. I slept outside. 5 days later, I never knew I had been declared wanted by the governor. I was hawking as usual when a police pick-up Ford stopped beside me and ordered me to stop. 2 of them quickly jumped down, carried my goods to the car and forced me to enter the car. They drove off with me. While inside the car, I carefully watched policemen, and with them was one army man, possibly the first soldier, who halted me when I wanted to find my way into the governor's house. I began to panic that finally I had gotten myself into trouble. I was ready to face whatever consequence because I knew I had done no wrong. What I thought would happen was, however, entirely different from what happened. The governor was very happy to receive me into the governor's house. He appreciated my effort and told me after several investigations, the deputy governor, being Mr. Alabunmi Oriomi, was the one who plotted his death so he could become the governor of the state. He also disclosed that the deputy governor and gangsters had been sentenced to life imprisonment. He enrolled me into school, bought me an exotic jeep with numerous soldiers, mopples and policemen accompanying me as an escort. As if that was not enough, he awarded me the most popular boy in the city. I became a hero who was published on many newspapers, showed on every TV station, and my name broadcasted nationwide on all radio stations. An evil child now lives in governor's house, the mad boy, now the most popular boy in the city. I've achieved what many people who have lived in the city for 2 years could not achieve. I know it's not by my power but by the grace of God. I vowed never to live and see the needy ones suffer. I proceeded to finding an organization called HOT-SHYP. Our mission was to eradicate poverty. 2 months later, I headed to my village on convoy. Nobody recognized me again. I headed straight to Igwe's palace with my security men. Even the Igwe and the council of elders could not recognize me. When I first came in with my security men, everybody bowed for me, including the Igwe. As a sign of respect, I now disclosed to them I was the evil child. They were all full of shame and guilt. I asked about my mother, and I was told she was banished from the villager, since the gods rejected her as a sacrifice. I gave them an order to find my mother within 10 hours, otherwise I would declare state of emergency in the land of aka. 5 days later, I lodged in a hotel, a town that gave our village 600 kilometers gap. It was 7:30 a.m. I was inside my hotel room when my phone rang and I rang it up. It was the Igwe. "Good morning, sir." Igwe's voice was clearly heard. "Good morning. Who's this?" I asked. "It's me, Igwe Oloroso," he identified. Yes, Igwe, have you found my mother? I inquired. Yes. We just found her. In fact, she's with me now. Are you serious? Wow. I aborted the call immediately and happily jumped down from the bed. I sang and danced for a while. I alerted my escorts, and we headed towards my village. Once in the village, I saw my mother and began to shed tears. Her look was just like a mad woman. She was full of surprises, and began to shed tears too as we embraced ourselves. I quickly ordered the Igwe to permit her use this bathroom. After taking her shower, I ordered one of my security men to give her a good cloth to change into. She was the best mother in the whole wide world. She was my idol. She was the reason I was still living. There's something left for me to hear. I know you might be waiting to hear it too, the mystique surrounding my birth. Even though some would say it's no longer important or necessary since I've become successful already, but to me it's something I've always wanted to hear. I ordered Igwe to gather the villagers including the council of elders to the village square. And he did as I ordered him. Just as usually, they formed a circle. Igwe broke the law of silence as he opened the speech. Good afternoon, good people of aka Igwe. Villagers responded. We have a very important personality in our midst. He is the reason we have all gathered here in respect of his achievement nationwide. He is the founder of Hot. I am also proud to announce that he is our son. It is a proud thing to say that such person hails from this village. His name is scattered all over the world, popularly known as the youngest minister of the most popular boy in the city. He is no other person than our son, Okchukwu. The villagers became silent. They were all looking around to see the Okchukwu Igwe was referring to. Nobody expected my own Okchukwu. But it turned out to be a great surprise to them when I came from now here with my mother to address them. Good people of aka, I greet you all. I started with a greeting. I know many of you cannot recognize me, even while standing before you. In order to identify myself to your own best recognition, I must use the name you all know me as, an evil child. Villagers screamed simultaneously. Shame was the next thing that appeared on their faces. I continued. The evil child everybody scorned and despised like it were the evil child that must die. The evil child that was tortured mercilessly by his own people. The evil child that nearly beaten to the youths. The evil child was bullied and assaulted by his fellow children. The evil child that was enclosed in a cage with his mother for whole 1 month. My mother was already in deep cry. And as was I. Many who were affectionately hurt were also crying with us. Even Igwe. And the council of elders were remorsefully shedding tears. I continued. Does anyone know how it feels to be scorned, despised and rejected by your own people? People who are supposed to you, turned against you. Not only did everybody rejected us, but there was never a day you couldn't find one fault or the other in order to have us punished. Why? Oh, we really suffered in the hand of the people who are supposed to be our people. You said I was behind the death of every single soil on this village. You accused me of killing them with my evil power. Come to think of it, I possessed such an evil power and refused to destroy this land for making us suffer the way we did. You made us suffer because of one useless tradition. This is absolutely insane. Now can anyone answer this question? Without sentiment, since I've been away from this village, hasn't anyone died? Nobody responded. I continued. I heard that Mazi Uche is dead. Why don't you accuse me of killing him too? I don't even know the reason. I was called an evil child and I'm sure many standing here today don't know either. No one ever told me the mystique surrounded my birth, yet I was being punished for that. I wanted me mother to tell me the story about the mystique surrounding my birth before everybody, but the agony on her face showed she was never ready for that, so appointed Mazi Uzu to take up the job. He remorsefully stood and began with a faded voice. Your father was banished from Umudima village as a result of having his hands stained with blood. He ran to aka for a refuge, which is a great abomination. According to our tradition, several efforts made to eliminate his life proved abortive because of how brave, strong, and powerful he was. He's so powerful that no warrior in aka land was able to face him. Since ever he came to our land, he became a noose on our necks. He started stealing our domestic animals, goats, fowls, and others. Strange things like premature death began to occur in our land. He killed, without remorse, anyone who questioned his unscrupulous attitude. We had 4 of our remarkable and reputed elders killed by him. One day we decided to employ the assistance of Umudima warriors since they were more powerful than our warriors. But when they come, your father was nowhere to be found. Little did we know that your mother was the one who took him. Before we knew he was harbored by your mother, Umudima warriors had already gone back to their village. And refused to come back again. We, the Council of Elders, thought of what to do. And later came up a brilliant idea. We poisoned his food through your mother, who claimed she was being used by your father. When we discovered your mother was pregnant. For him some months later, we decided to sacrifice her. But she gods rejected her because of the pregnancy. We know the child Kioma was carrying would suffer, because we regarded the descent of your father an evil. We believed he would always give birth to a creature in his likeness. We agreed with the gods to sacrifice the child when he is 15 years old, but you have all got it wrong. Can't you see? I began with a misty-eyed. I was created to be opposite of my father. I was created to change the story of this village. And not to destroy it. Like my mom always told me, if you wish to harm other, when you become rich, God will definitely make you nobody. But if you wish to help others when you become rich, God will definitely be you great. I shared a different destiny with my father, and that makes us different. You have judged me wrongly. I was deeply shedding tears. And so was my mother. Igwe apologetically knelt down, followed by the council of elders before the villagers. Should I forgive these people after all they have done to me and my mother? My mother also knelt down, in apology, asking me to forgive them. I couldn't just imagine my mother kneeling down for me. She made me what I am today. She is my idol. I raised her up immediately and affectionately embraced each other. Rapprochement reignited between me and the villagers. I made aka land. The greatest of all neighboring villagers. I called the attention of government to our village. Roads were constructed, companies, factories. And industries built. Boon water, almost in every compound. Schools built, in abundant, constant electricity, and most importantly local government created. I rewarded Iya Bisi by securing a good office in the Ministry of Finance. I took my mother to Lagos. And we lived happily together in the governor's house. To you, my listeners, never you give up on yourself. That you are rejected by people, or no one believes in you, doesn't necessarily mean you are worthless or nobody. Keep working on what you believe in. When you fall, rise up. And try again and again. God will definitely change your story someday. Always learn to live life well. Be wise and live responsibly. The end. Please subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. Like and share this story to your loved ones, family, and friends. Thank you so much. Bye bye.